on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning, morning.
Good morning, viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. I'm Julien Skeete, and as we continue this morning, we head into discussions as we speak with Rajiv Diptee, President of the Supermarket Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and we're speaking high supermarket prices at Christmas. And that's high at the national level, and then we're speaking higher, even higher prices here in Tobago. Good morning to you.
Good morning to the Tobago Updates team. And good morning, Tobago.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us here this morning. So we're going to kick off the conversation immediately. We are in that countdown week, so to speak. And one of the issues that we are hearing being raised nationally is the issue of increased prices, which certainly may be holding back those who would normally shop in bulk, so to speak, at this time of year. What's your feedback and the perspective coming from the Supermarkets Association of Trinidad and Tobago? What's accounting for this?
Good morning. Well, certainly there has been an aspect of inflation happening, at the national level, and that's trickled down from our international suppliers. However, what has been put into play prior to Christmas was a lot of sales and promotions that were really trending ahead of Christmas and Diwali, for that matter. And a lot of our suppliers worked closely with stores to ensure that there would be lots of deals and specials available to customers heading into Christmas. In fact, one of what we're seeing right now in the market is that a lot of customers, the overall spending on the deals and promotions for the Christmas period has been the highest in nearly 2 years. So we're seeing a lot of customers trending towards those specials. They are definitely shopping around for those in particular. What we tend to notice around this season is that customers tend to, you see that the spending has been kind of held back, with pay coming, with the government pay coming in today or tomorrow, I believe, and you're definitely seeing the rush in the stores now. But there's still an aspect of restraint by customers, and it's fairly macroeconomic. I mean, you have the property tax coming into play on January 1st. There's talk of increased utility rates in 2024, and there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to people, spending in general. That's the world of retail right now. And it's not just the supermarkets that are experiencing this, it is the sector at large. However, what we're seeing right now is customers are really, they're pushing to make it a really Christmas experience for their families and households, and that's what we're seeing in the stores right now.
We're talking about, you mentioned shopping around, which of course you want to shop around to ensure you get the best deals. But I'm wondering, is there not a standard where prices have to remain at a certain level? Because you can go in one area and get the same product for a completely different price when you go in a different area. Is there something that causes that shift in the price range? For instance, especially in the Tobago scenario, prices are significantly higher in Tobago, and in some areas in Trinidad, when you go in different areas, the prices vary for the very same product. Can you speak to that?
Certainly. So what I can explain, particularly where prices tend to differ from supermarket to supermarket across the country, is that there's a fierce. Retailers are constantly battling it out for the dollar in the consumer's wallet. And how they achieve this is through bulk buying and volume discounts. So the bigger chain stores, for example, are able to buy, let's say, 1,000 cases of product or a lot more, and they're able to offer bulk discounts at much lower prices than some of the smaller stores who are not able to achieve these volumes. So it's something that the industry is dictated by these types of trends, and they really work to the benefit of the customers and the consumers that come through the doors. And that's how these deals and promotions are able to be offered. You will have retailers working closely with some distributors and suppliers to offer these discounts back to the consuming public. With respect to what we tend to see in Tobago, I've had this conversation with distributors in particular because they are the ones whose warehouses in Tobago, of course, they've pointed to the anomaly with the transport paradigm from Trinidad. However, they are suggesting to me that prices in Tobago should be on parity with Trinidad. However, just like this morning, that's not what I'm hearing. So I think it's something that we have to look into a little bit further.
All right. And I want you to tell us as well about the role of the supermarket association when it comes to far and wide treating with particularly price reductions. We see no challenges with supermarkets coming together when there are price increases to ensure that certain areas go up. For example, if particular items, depending on where they are coming from, the stock and so on, some increase immediately, some increase down the road. Tell us the role of the supermarket association in ensuring the reverse as well. When we potentially see reductions, we don't tend to see it across the board in supermarkets in the manner in which we will see the immediate move of prices. For example, if an increase in gas is announced now, we will see change in prices, and the chain effect will lead to higher prices on the shelves because of delivery, etc. But when we see reduction, sometimes we only see those benefits coming from fewer entities. What kind of role can the supermarket association play in a scenario like this?
Okay, so just to point out, using your analogy with respect to fuels, that's a government-regulated industry. So, for example, those price changes are almost instantaneous. However, with respect to the food retail sector, it's different in that, if, for example, I'm holding stock from a certain supplier, I would have paid for it at certain prices, and those price increases or decreases, similarly to when NFM announced a price decrease earlier this year.
Correct.
They are passed on to the customer at the point in time when the stock is received from National Flour Mills. So it's not going to be instantaneous across all stores. With respect to what you tend to see with some of the supermarkets, again, it's a very peculiar operation. Each supermarket has a certain cost of operation, so they tend to there's no hard and fast rule of thumb for the dictating the margins in store. However, you really have to keep in mind that the competition across Trinidad and Tobago is uniquely fierce, in that there are so many supermarkets, mini-marts, warehouse membership retailers that are competing for the consumer's dollar. So no retailer can really set prices outside of a certain standard. So there is standardization, and this is something particularly where consumers seek redress. I've seen the Consumer Affairs Division outlining the certain steps to ensure that prices are at an accessible level for the consumers. And to be fair to the supermarkets as well, they also want the prices to be accessible to the customers. So what we tend to do is to put pressure back on the suppliers, because remember, supermarkets aren't importers of goods. We are at the end of a value chain where we're purchasing the goods from local suppliers and distributors. For example, you have local suppliers and distributors, manufacturers such as Vemco, Nestle. You've got lots of distributors who supply the products to the supermarkets. Now they have to ensure that they are fetching the best prices available for the public, and they offer those prices back to the supermarkets. And it's the supermarkets now that have to make sure, or to ensure, that their prices are competitive enough to attract the customers. Because in the world of fast-moving consumer goods, nobody wants goods to sit on their shelves. They want the customers to come in store and get it. So it's for us, it's a paradigm where we really want to ensure that the goods move, that the public has accessible pricing, and that we put pressure back on suppliers to say, hey, look, these price points are outside of what the customer is going to want. So it either comes off the shelf, or we find product substitution, or we find a way to make sure that we can offer it at lower prices.
Right, so essentially there isn't really a standard regulation in terms of how much you can mark up your prices in terms of your retail.
Benefit of the public, because there are so many supermarkets, and I mean, look, you have the largest chain in the country, Massey Stores. You've got very competitive household stores, Extra Foods, besides the Food King. You've got lots, you've got many. And those many options are what in a capitalist market, or in a, they ensure that the prices available to the public are some of the best. And you constantly see this on social media, for example, where people have their preferred retailers of choice. And this is something that where we see, particularly around now, you're seeing a lot of really phenomenal specials and promotions that where customers are chasing certain products, and that's really what drives the industry.
All right, excellent. For the benefit of our viewers and listeners, you mentioned a little while ago, speaking specifically to the consumer, division, and that's in relation to complaints also. Just so that persons understand the distinction, just tell us very briefly, how would you describe as the major role and responsibility of the Supermarkets Association of Trinidad and Tobago, so people make that distinction between the two entities, and what's your current membership like in terms of representation?
So the Supermarket Association of Trinidad and Tobago works very closely with entities such as the Ministry of Trade and Industry, of which the Consumer Affairs Division is a statutory body within that. And we work to ensure that standards, that the constant collaboration between all these stakeholders, really, they tend to achieve the outcomes of offering the best products, the best prices, and there's also aspects that we don't often talk about: offering clean and sanitary environments, making sure that back stores and warehouses are up to scratch, that the technology in store is of a certain nature so that accounting and accountability can be achieved. Basically, we at the Supermarket Association really work to achieve better outcomes, typically in the interest of the customers as well as the retailers, to ensure the highest efficiency of operations. The membership of the Supermarket Association comprises some of the most common household names in the country. You've got all your major supermarkets under the umbrella of the Supermarket Association. We're also heavily involved in charities and benefits, and we work very closely. Just for example, in December, I'm coordinating several charities at the moment. We tend to do relief where necessary, but primarily what we do is we work in the interest of retailers to achieve the best outcomes for the customers, while ensuring that there's constant dialogue, collaboration with key stakeholders such as Consumer Affairs Division, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Health, OSH, amongst so many more.
And you hit the nail on the head. My follow-up question had to do specifically with that. Through my involvement with Road Free, and that's one of the areas I'd really like you to highlight, so people recognize that beyond just supermarkets making an income, there is also that level of participation in relation to charitable work. So kudos and commendations in that regard, most definitely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
In terms of, you said earlier that this is the highest in the past 2 years in terms of customers participating in deals and sales around this time. And we're also talking about salaries coming in today or tomorrow. How can you measure in terms of customer purchases or involvement in supermarket shopping for this period in relation to last year? What is it like? I know you said the deals and the discounts and whatever is high, but in terms of your regular shopping, what percentage of shopping have you been able to measure thus far? Have you been able to do that?
So just keeping in mind that what has come out of the pandemic since that concluded is that you've had a more discerning customer coming into the supermarket. They are the reason that the deals and the specials are so proliferated is because consumers are demanding them. Consumers, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but consumers worldwide are definitely looking at to achieve the best value for their dollar. So while they're chasing that, uh, we've also seen, and that really covers, for example, different categories: sparkling wines, hams, biscuits, confectionery, chocolates, the stuff that we really households really enjoy around Christmas, and everything else that they need to fill their pantries so that they can make all their favorite foods on for the season. Now, with respect to regular shopping, that has been something where that has, in my opinion, remained flat. And it's remained flat for not just prices, but you've also had a general cost of living increased. I mean, let's keep in mind that we've had increases in the cost of living brought about by. Um, uh, we have to bear in mind that it's not just supermarket prices that have seen increases, but across many sectors we have seen increases, and where we consider that the cost of living may go up based on certain um, increases in property tax, in utilities, things like that next year, it creates an environment of uncertainty. And where you have this element is where customers are going to say, okay, I'm going to hold my hand and, really just buy what I need. And it's been that kind of culture when you see that the regular shoppers are just shopping for the basics and they are sticking to that. Of course, you have some customers who are intensely brand loyal and will buy and will purchase. But for the most part, there's been flat sales for the period.
All right. And I want you to share with us very quickly before we close this morning. I know we're heading into 2024, and just as you mentioned earlier, we're anticipating a number of increases or additional things that will come, whether it be rate increases, etc., just as you have mentioned in relation to 2024, which will naturally reach right down or trickle down, I should say, to also affect the supermarket associations. If you had the opportunity to make specific recommendations, from the standpoint of legislation or the government determinations, what kind of recommendations would you want to make as possibilities of reducing in some way, form, or fashion some of the costs, even if it is for basic items? And I make reference to up to a few years ago, I know that there were announcements even in those times with regards to basic items, removal of VAT and taxes and so on, and these kinds of things that will help to reduce and to make them more available to the wider cross-section of the population. But what would be one or two of your recommendations, if we had to say probably a Christmas wish going into the new year, to really help clients and customers being able to treat with these higher prices, or possibly even seeing not raising it any further given the circumstances?
All very good points. And, I don't want, at the risk of sounding redundant, because we've been here before. I've spoken about, we've made recommendations, and we've spoke about the need to incrementally adjust the population to certain taxes coming into play, to utility hikes in an incremental fashion, as was our recommendation earlier in the year. When you consider that there is inflationary aspects to global food prices, you really have to ask yourself, what processes or processes can we improve? What can we look at to ensure that the prices that are being offered by the importers, suppliers, distributors to supermarkets are the best prices? And I mean, if I had to consider one thing right now that has been something ad nauseum that we've spoken about, it would be the severe inefficiencies at the port and with customs, and the lack of clarity that really steps into that process. Why is it that these containers are taking so long to clear, especially around this period? Why is it that we have not heard from customs? Why is nobody talking about this? This adds a massive layer of cost to the final end product, to customers, through no fault of the importers or the supermarkets, because costs are being incurred via these delays and demurrage at the port. So why is it that we can't get that right? And why is it that the authorities aren't examining this? That would be something I would really like to see happening, because it would ensure that, you know, that stores receive the best prices, that the end consumer receives the best prices. Because when there are delays, there are significant costs being incurred.
All right. We want to thank you so much for joining us this morning and for shedding some light and some insight into the actual production of how do we get items on the shelves. Because as consumers, we really think about the prices we pay, but there's so much to it. So we thank you so much for bringing that light to us this morning and for explaining to us the whole production scenario there. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with Rajiv Diptee, and he's the president of the Supermarkets Association of Trinidad and Tobago, talking about higher prices at Christmas time and what accounts for this, and also giving us some recommendations if he had the opportunity to make legislation where prices are concerned. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. And viewers, we thank you so much for always choosing us. You know, Julian, we were speaking about so many different things as it relates to our foods on the shelves, our items on the shelves, and so many points were raised. As I mentioned earlier, as the consumer, you only think about what is the cost of this item to me, but there is so much, the chain that happens in the background to get it on the shelves. And in as much as we want the best prices, there are so many things that account to what the price is going to be when it gets to the shelf, as it is with any other service, goods or products or whatever as it might be. And so we really have to take those things into consideration. And he mentioned something about brand loyalty. I know I am very guilty about my brands. I like my specific brands, but what this period and this season coming out of the pandemic, as he mentioned also, has shown me is that, I mean, it's really the same product with a different label. You know, there are some brands that you really are loyal to specifically because you know the quality, but then there are some things that you can make adjustments to. There are some things that you can substitute and get similar value in terms of the product for a lesser cost.
I'm correct. You know, particularly at this time, and I feel like that level of consciousness raised for me a few years ago when I started, you know, involvement with my NGO with regards to trying to get the best possible value for your money to help others in need. And, you know, you're going to purchase wholesale, you're going to supermarkets that will offer you discounts for the larger packages and so on. And then it occurred to me, you know, when supermarkets and others are helping you and they say, well, you know, if you want to be able to assist more persons, this is, your dollar could go a little further if you take this generic versus, you know what I mean, in terms of particular areas. And, you know, I smile because it really took me back, because the same thing with me prior to that experience focused on the same kind of brand loyalty.
That's right.
You know, and therefore I got wised up almost immediately a few years ago, because I'm saying if I can get value for my dollar to help others in need, I can do the same
for
thing
myself,
within my very own
home,
within my very own home. So you know, it's something that we ought to be very conscious of and really try to make the best use of what is available in the circumstances, and knowing very well we all want to get that value, or in fact extended value for the dollar that we've worked for in the circumstances. And in this season it's no different. And so we just want to remind you, you know, even as you check in on the outside there, remember you also have a responsibility and you have the choice to connect with spaces and places and to verify and to make your decision in relation to prices. We see now we've got a new supermarket on the island, and certainly that has lent to others responding, and it almost reminds me of when we had one phone provider and then another one joined the market. You know, so naturally we are looking forward to what the extended benefits will be from these other supermarkets and entities now that there's a new player you know, on the road, so to speak, on the ground here in Tobago. And we look forward to the fact that competition will ultimately lead to the consumer being able to benefit even more.
That's right. All right, viewers, thank you so much for always choosing the morning show. Before we go to a break, up next is Rodney Pigott. Rodney Pigott is up next, chairman of Tobago Civil Net. He's up next, and we're going to have conversations with him when we get back from the break. But of course, before we go to the break, we invite you to share the live.
Share the live. Share the live.